Welcome to episode number 147 of CXOTalk. I'm Michael Krigsman, and today I'm speaking with Jonathan Reichental, who is the Chief Information Officer for the City of Palo Alto in the heart of Silicon Valley. And we're going to be talking about smart cities and data and government and open government and a lot of interesting topics related to innovation. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here. I love what you're doing here, so I can't wait for the conversation.
Well, thank you. I am excited, and I've been an admirer of yours for a long time, watching your tweets and from afar, watching the things you're doing with government and with data in Palo Alto. So let's start by give us a very brief sense of your background, just to set context.
Sure. So the fact that I'm doing public service is a little bit of a surprise to me, as it is to many of my own colleagues, friends, and family. Most of my career is in the private sector. It's always been tech, and it's always been innovation. So those are the two common themes, throughout my career to date. So I was in the private sector for, closing in on about 20 years. And it's only in the last 4 years that I've embarked on this very interesting adventure around the future of cities and the future of local government. So that's my journey. It's a fantastic place to innovate, as you'll hear in the minutes ahead.
Well, tell us about Palo Alto. So it's a famous city, and you've got a lot of interesting companies there. So tell us about Palo Alto.
It is a unique place. You're right, Michael. I think that people are surprised at the size of our city. It's 25 square miles. It's 67,000 residents only. But I have to say it grows by about 120,000 more people during the day. So we're, right now we're at about 180,000 people in our city. There's a lot of reasons why it's become sort of the heart of Silicon Valley. Hewlett and Packard had a lot to do with it, as did the semiconductor industry overall in bringing engineers out here and building facilities. Today, we kind of have a bit of a nexus of important things. We have Stanford University up the street. You can almost see it from my office. You've really got the venture capital home here in the world. Billions and billions of dollars flowing through Palo Alto each month. You have an affluent community. You have as a result of all the tech firms and this sort of propensity towards innovation, you have a lot of people who are engaged in networking and engaged in the civic life. So it's not one thing which makes Palo Alto special. It's this combination of things.
That must present a challenge to you. You're Chief Information Officer in a city that's populated with Stanford, the VCs, as you say, Facebook, Google, and so many startups. It must present a challenge for you.
I used to be the Chief Information Officer with O'Reilly Media, working with Tim O'Reilly. And I used to make the comment that being in an amazing company like that, it feels like everybody is a CIO or a CTO. Now I think I live in a city, and I work in a city where everybody is the Chief Information Officer. But I like to think of this as a very positive thing. People are very interested and understand tech. And I have this incredible network that I can leverage for ideas, for participation and brainstorming. A lot of the big tech companies now and a lot of small companies are getting into the civic innovation space. So I have to say that it's something that is a very big positive that I never lose sight of as I go around and talk about the cool things we're doing and some of the assets that I have at my disposal. And we do take advantage of it. We do like to work with a large range of stakeholders to get to achieve the successes that we've had.
So you take advantage of the local community and essentially the brain trust that exists all around you.
Yeah. First of all, we're inspired by the amazing stuff that happens around us. One of the things I do with my team, my tech team here at the city, is about every 2 months I take the team out for an hour to visit one of the amazing businesses in Palo Alto, and we'll have a meeting there. We'll have our all hands meeting. We'll hear from the company. We'll hear from one of their leaders what they do. We'll observe the environment in which they work. We were very inspired about the open workspace model, and we've adopted that here as a consequence. So it broadens minds, and it's a way for us to be inspired. And by the way, it's an interesting way for companies to be inspired about the possibilities in local government.
And do you find that these companies are willing to invest the time to share with you and your team?
Well, we're sensitive, of course, to the role of local government and not to overimpose. I'll give you an example. Last year, I hosted what was called the Palo Alto Apps Challenge. It was a competition that lasted about 6 months, and it was a way to engage the community in helping identify challenges and then solving those challenges by writing software and eventually deploying some smartphone apps. And it was enormously successful, by the way. 30% of the participants were under the age of 18, which to me was one of the greatest metrics and outcomes of it. But during this journey, we had an opportunity to tap into the local innovation ecosystem. And in particular, we brought some of the finalists, the 10 finalists, to Cloudera. Cloudera is a growing big data company, very successful. And we brought them to Cloudera. Their CEO said he would support us getting some coaching from their senior engineers, so the applicants, the finalists, would be able to work with these senior software engineers, and we did, and we went there and we spent an evening with them, and later on I asked the finalists and the eventual winners, what was the thing that was most exciting to you as part of this process, and they listed a couple of things, but in the top 3 was the ability to work with some of the finest software engineers in the world for several hours, so they could comment on code, they could do whiteboarding sessions. They really liked that, and that really, in many ways, epitomizes what's pretty neat about living and working here.
Now, you've been very involved with this idea of digital transformation in cities, also known as smart cities. Tell us about that. So to begin with, what is a smart city?
Yeah, we're getting into this topic in a big way. It does start with digital cities, and so we started a journey about 4 years ago, around about the time I joined. The city manager approached me and said, "Jonathan, what's a bold vision for tech at City Hall?" And I was doing my homework and I was researching it, talking to a lot of colleagues and talking to a lot of people outside the city, and we basically settled upon this idea of creating, building and enabling a leading digital city in the United States. And digital city is just what it sounds like. It's using the internet to provide city services. So it's taking a lot of paper-based services and putting them on the internet, on our website, deploying lots of cell phone capabilities and smartphone capabilities, having a more open government and making available data in machine consumable formats as well as other formats, a whole collection of internet-related, digital-related areas. By the way, we started that journey in 2011. In 2013, the Center for Digital Government, based out of Sacramento, named Palo Alto the #1 digital city in America for our size. So we were thrilled to get that recognition of our efforts. It was not a recognition that we'd finished the job. If anything, it was a recognition that we had started the journey and we're headed in the right direction. And each year since then, we've been named in the top 5 most digital cities in America. But if I could get to the hardier question, which is smart cities. So smart cities is really the next generation of this. In digital, it is really about moving from analog to bits. And in smart cities, it's not only the sort of digital world, but it's the physical world too. So if I could sort of summarize, we have significant challenges in our cities, whether it's great transportation options, whether it's the impact our cities are having on climate change, and they happen to be the #1 most important place for making a difference, whether it's energy and energy solutions, whether it's better buildings, more health, better public safety. All of these things are going to benefit from a improved and innovative technology. So if we bring together massive city problems, and these are tough ones, we bring together innovative technology, data, civic engagement. If you kind of mash that together, you really have the beginning of a definition of a future in which cities just operate better. They create a better quality of life. And I think, if you can distill out of that, in somewhere there is a definition for what a smart city is.
So give us some examples. This is pretty interesting. So you're bringing together massive city problems, data, and yes, innovative solutions. So give us some examples of how this actually makes life better for the people who live in Palo Alto, say.
Okay. So I'll use 2 examples, one relatively simple, one more complex. When you enter an urban environment and when you come into Palo Alto, and there's a lot of traffic in the downtown areas, the general number that's thrown around is that 40% of the congestion are people looking for parking spaces. 40%. And this is pretty consistent worldwide. This is not an American or California phenomenon. This is a global phenomenon. So if we can find ways for people to identify available parking spaces so cars can go directly to them, I think we can extrapolate that potentially you can reduce the amount of overall urban center congestion. So smart city approach would say, well, how do you make available this knowledge that a parking space is available? Well, you might have a sensor. And yes, in Palo Alto, we are experimenting with sensors in parking spaces. And once the sensor knows whether a car is in that space or not, that information then transmits to some cloud resource, which in turn is consumed by an app, and then the app will inform the driver. So that's one sort of practical. I think everybody can relate to this one. But let's continue the thought around transportation, because it happens to be definitely among city governments, among the top 5 big challenges. In the city of Palo Alto, we've recently gone from analog traffic signals to internet protocol-based traffic signals. So traffic signals become nodes on a network. They become potentially more intelligent. We can control them through software. Now, there's lots of advantages. So people get frustrated by traffic signals, maybe a light, a very popular intersection. The light is too long at red. Perhaps it's too brief and it could be dangerous. So we can do a few things now with this new network. For one, we can have it dynamic, and we can have dynamic across the entire city. So it changes based on conditions. So that's one. Now that's not entirely innovative. That's happened for a while, even on the analog systems. But we can have a granular level of managing those signals. The next thing we can do, we can start to have a series of sensors on our traffic signals that can do things like count traffic, count different types of traffic. Is the traffic bicycles, pedestrians, cars, trucks? And these sensors can tell us what direction are these different entities going. Once we are able to collect that information in real time, 24 hours a day, we can start to inform decision makers about how we plan our infrastructure, how we can redesign dangerous intersections or make them more efficient. And so we're working on that. And so that's smart transportation. That's having the infrastructure respond to human and human needs in a much more organic and intelligent way.
So the sensor data enables the beneficiaries immediately, like in the case of parking, are people who are circling around trying to find a parking space. And yet you can also use that data for broader strategic planning within the scope of the city planning departments.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And think of these things as sort of some of the near-term opportunities. I mean, if we can get both of these things right, and we'll tweak and calibrate them as we work through this work, there's going to be obvious advantages to the community of Palo Alto and other communities to do this. But let's start to think even further. We're going to be collecting an enormous amount of data with these traffic signals. There might be other stakeholders who are interested. And we've already met with some of the car companies. Many of the global car companies have innovation labs in Palo Alto or close by. And they're interested in traffic information. They're really interested in real-time traffic information that we can potentially send to the cloud over our network, and then it can be consumed by a whole range of stakeholders, because we're basically going to make it all available. And so you could imagine a leading car company might want to understand traffic patterns in a particular urban area. But if we even go further, maybe the car company wants to feed that data to the cars, so cars can be more intelligent and more informed. And I start to think about a world potentially in the next decade or beyond where we have self-driving cars and cars on demand. Data is going to be really important. Rich, real-time environmental data will really contribute towards safer traffic, easier flowing traffic. And our hope, and I think everyone's hope, is just a smarter traffic network.
Jonathan, we have a question from Arsalan Khan on Twitter, who asks, is there a model, a smart city model that you have used or learned from as you've been constructing your smart city in Palo Alto?
Thank you so much for that question. So, yeah, one of the qualities that the city of Palo Alto adheres to, and certainly it's a personal quality, is we're going to be transparent about everything. And we're really at the start of this smart city journey, as are most cities, despite perhaps some claims differently. We're all figuring this out together. The way I would define the state of Palo Alto today is we have a couple of handfuls of initiatives and projects underway that meet the definition of a smart city initiative. But I'll say to you today, we don't have a cohesive multi-year strategy yet. So it's December 2015. If, Michael, you and I talk a year from now, I hope my answer will be different. I think it will be. I've been charged to work with some of our city leadership to start to craft a framework for what a smart city strategy looks like in Palo Alto. And I'm going to say this right now, we're going to share that with whoever wants it. We're going to be open about it and publish it. And so at the right time, when it's ready and others want to review it and even use it, part of the privilege of working for the birthplace and heart of Silicon Valley is that people look to us and they're interested in what we're doing, and we can create positive models for local government. So it's not the best answer that your Twitter follower there wanted, but it's a honest answer about where we're at in this journey together.
Well, clearly you've done a lot, but clearly it's still early days for all of this. The notion of sensors, Internet of Things, everything you're talking about.
Yeah, not only, so what does it mean to be early days? What it means is there's enormous opportunity ahead. There's enormous opportunity for those people who want to make a difference, right? Those people who want to participate from a social good perspective. It's early days for entrepreneurs. And as we look out, and I listen to some of the analysts who are well informed on this. This is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity, and over the course of a decade or so, it's multi-trillions of opportunity to effectively rethink, redesign, re-engineer, and rebuild our cities. Some countries have the luxury of building new cities, and they're being built from the ground up as smart cities. But sadly, that won't be the case for the vast majority of cities in the world, where we have to change the wings on the plane while the plane is flying. We don't have the choice to shut down a city for a few years to do the retrofit we have to do. We have to do it while it's underway. So, I would encourage so many people to think about how they could be part of this as a long-term employment opportunity, even a short-term employment opportunity. How businesses can get engaged. This is going to be high-value work in the future. We're entering a world in which we're thinking about what will humans do when robots and artificial intelligence and computing does so much of what we do. There's got to be high-value, good work for many of us. And if you want to look at one of the sectors, I'm really excited about the possibilities for cities and what we can do.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you go about these projects. It requires infrastructure, technology. There's a cultural dimension, I'm sure, inside the city. There's getting the public to use this. I'm sure along the way, because you're in government and because you're transparent, you must have critics who say, no, 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 don't change, because that's the nature of the beast. You're doing something new. So how do you go about doing this?
Oh, it's so easy. I'm just kidding, of course. There's many parts to that question. That is an insightful question. If we never did anything with tech at the beginning, we'd still have a lot of work to do on culture. And we do have to educate city leaders, elected officials, city managers, commissioners, the people who are in a position of being able to make the important decisions that lie ahead. There is going to be a period of education. The fact that we're having this conversation today and we're talking about what a digital city is and what a smart city is, we're already ahead of the curve. Many people don't understand what this is, and many people don't understand how the things we're talking about fit into the context of other city priorities. We still have, here in Northern California, despite quite a lot of affluence, we have a housing crisis, and we have a homeless crisis. We have a drought. We have very fundamental challenges that when you talk about digitizing and smartness, people might say, well, wait a minute, we've no patience for that. That might happen at a different time. We got to solve these other issues. What we have to do as leaders and technologists and entrepreneurs and innovators is educate and then begin to build a storyline around how a smarter city actually helps to solve some of these other issues, like better use of water. If we have sensors on water systems, for example, and that are small and cheap, we can detect leaks easier, and we can solve those leaks, so we don't lose as much, fresh water as we do when we distribute water around cities. This is a big problem in the U.S., but it's a huge problem in places like India and China and across the world. So let me be clear that the challenges ahead are enormous, even for an enlightened, educated, and engaged community like the City of Palo Alto. Let me just give you just one quick sort of idea of that. One of the things that people challenge me with when I'm at conferences or I'm talking is they say, well, it's so easy for you because you're at the City of Palo Alto. Well, there's a little bit of truth to that. I certainly have people who will listen to these ideas because they're in tune with tech. But we're also careful and pragmatic about taxpayer money. We also have a lot of priorities, So often when I come forward with an idea, or my team does, particularly one that's pushing up against the edge of innovation. When we first proposed our open data platform, there was a lot of resistance, and I take that responsibility to be able to educate and build a strong business case in support of something like this. Really focusing on value and benefit, right? So I don't get a free ride. It's a little easier than it would be perhaps in a different city without the technology ecosystem we have here. But the onus is on us as leaders to use the same qualities we use in the private sector to convince people of value and move forward with the tough work ahead.
Tell us about, let's talk about the data aspect of this, the type of data that you can collect and the ways that you can use it internally, but also the ways that you can share it with the public to make that open data accessible to other people with good ideas who might want to use it.
Yeah, thanks for that question. We really started our open data work in around 2011. And we were modest in our aspirations at that point. There was no platform, so I wanted us to deploy a platform. I wanted us to get some basic data sets on it, demographic information, some energy information. After all, Palo Alto is a full utilities city. We provide electricity, gas, water, and other utilities. We wanted to experiment and get some experience in taking data from our enterprise systems and making it available to the public. At the time, we really characterized it as first of all, as a responsibility. Government has to make available most data anyway through both the federal the Federal Access to Information Act, FOIA, and Freedom of Information Act, couldn't get it out of my mouth there, or here locally, the California Public Records Act. So we have to do it anyway if asked, mostly. So this was a way of saying, well, we'll get ahead of the questions and make our data available. Makes for a richer, more open democracy. When we put our salary information on open data, the day we did that really changed in many ways the relationship between the city and the media. This was an area that historically was contentious because sometimes, many years ago, the city would make available a PDF file and to the media when they wanted to publish salaries. And a PDF file isn't exactly the most fun file to work with when you want to slice and dice and analyze data. So today you can do that. We make it in machine consumable format, so you can take a look at that data. But as the years have passed and we've matured our open data platform, the value proposition has grown too. Just a couple of years ago, we posted our permit data, and permit data is very valuable and very interesting to a large number of stakeholders. And so we just published it in near real time. So I think at the time it was once every 12 hours. If you went in on Monday morning to our development services center, or actually go online and request a permit for some construction in your house, by night, that information, which is public record, would already be on our open data system. So we started publishing that, and a number of companies decided to build applications around it by consuming that permit data and building solutions for lots of people who are interested in it. And think about that. All we did was make the data available. These companies, on their own volition and own budgets, built solutions that ultimately are actually quite useful to our community and to our city staff. So we've started to enable an ecosystem of external private entities to build solutions that we may have ultimately had to build, or perhaps we would like to have built but never got to it. And so today, it's quite a rich interaction between the data sets we have and the stakeholders, from private businesses to academics to community members who consume and use that data for a whole host of things.
I think this whole notion of the combination of processes. So for example, with parking, how do we do parking today? How can we rethink the way that we do parking, being enabled by sensors and by data woven together through the cloud is so interesting. Do you have other examples, other similar examples of things you've either done or would like to do?
Well, I'll give you another example, one or two, and I'll also sort of issue kind of a challenge to entrepreneurs. So the backdrop of your question is, here we see the emergence of the Internet of Things, right? This idea that we're going to be able to not only have almost every device and piece of infrastructure collect information and be available to produce information, to create an enormous amount of data, send that to the cloud, have it consumed, have machines make decisions together independent of humans. I mean, we're creating this, an enormous amount of new capabilities. If the first sort of phase of the internet was about connecting humans to computers, and then the second phase was about using the internet to connect humans to humans, this third phase, which is connecting machines to machines, is going to be much bigger and transformational than those two first phases. And if you think about what that means when you embed an Internet of Things in a city context, and that the city ultimately is a collection of things, we can only anticipate that we're entering what potentially could be a series of revolutionary changes in the way our cities operate. So I wanted to really stress the opportunity that the Internet of Things presents in a city context alone. The other example I'll give here, moving away from transportation, is really around energy. Cities need to think deeply about how they're going to be powered and provide the quality of life that every human wants around the world, as we now are largely an urban planet, and will be almost the entirety of our planet will live in cities by about 2050. The energy needs are going to be enormous, and so we have to be thinking and acting on different ways of providing and consuming energy. By the way, as a slight segue, we're very optimistic about the role that solar will play now. I think we're moving from solar being a novelty to solar becoming a real viable option, and then potentially leading the charge in the decades ahead. So when we look at energy, there is a concept called smart grid, which really reflects the very best of the Internet of Things. Rather than your house sort of being I'll call it, respectfully, sort of a dumb entity on the edge of an energy network, your house becomes a treasure trove of data around every socket and every device that you use, your washing machine, your television, every one of your iPads and other devices. And if we can start to collect that at the device level, and we do as an experiment, we're starting to do that here in Palo Alto. We have a small smart grid. We start to aggregate that. We can do lots of things with that data. So at the house level, right down to the home and family level, enormous, interesting and valuable data can be produced and actually delivered back to the family in a way that they can understand their energy consumption behaviors. But we can also take neighborhoods and aggregate this information such that now we can see behavior across neighborhoods. Now we can look for opportunities for improvement. When we feed that information in an anonymous fashion back to neighborhoods, people become quite competitive. We start to gamify how they use their power. So, if you are a outlier and you see houses and homes of similar size, and you're an outlier, there perhaps would be an incentive there to understand more. Why are we what are we doing that's different to our neighbors, and perhaps encourage positive behavior. So, it's you can see the range of possibilities here, and I'm only touching on it very lightly.
How do you sell this inside the city? Because as you said, there are all of these different priorities. And here's Jonathan Reichental, who's CIO of the city, going before the city council or to whatever group it is that needs to fund this and approve this. And you're talking science fiction. And they're saying, well, what are they saying?
Well, hopefully it's not all science fiction. When you're a leader, you do have to paint a vision for the future. And sometimes you can lose people that way, of course. But other times you have a opportunity to inspire. So some of the things we do, we try to be as practical as possible. I mean, we're only given a little bit of space to think big and think and to envisage the future. We have to make it real quickly. And so that's what we try to do. Now, this is not a mission for me alone. One of the important qualities of being successful in beginning the journey towards a smart city is that everybody's involved. And so the messaging has to come from across departments, whether you're the public works department, the utilities, the parks department, even our police chief and our head of libraries. We all have to be part of this dialogue and not only champion the positives across departments, but champion the positives that are relevant to individual departments.
The basic. Oh, please! I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm looking forward to your next question or your follow on there. I would just say that. Let me summarize by saying we have a little room for science fiction, but we have to be visionary, bold, but we have to be almost always practical, and the voice of this change has to come from across the organization.
So this type of innovation, the only way to make it happen, from what you're saying, is to develop a consensus, or at the very least a collaboration around some goals that goes across different departments in the city.
I really do. Yeah, that's exactly right. Let me give you two quick little interesting thoughts here. One is on the broad topic of innovation, and I've been in one way or another involved in innovation now for almost about 25 years, is innovation doesn't belong to a department or an individual. Companies and organizations that have chief innovation officers need to be real careful about how that's implemented, because what happens is the people will see that somebody else owns that responsibility, and that will allow them to be not a participant in innovative things. Now, that said, clearly a chief innovation officer has a significant role to play, but it has to be collaborative at its heart. It can't be a center. It has to be collaborative across the organization. And so the other thing I want to share, I think I've lost my train of thought on that, but let's continue.
Yeah, the whole idea of collaboration, and on that topic, and unfortunately we're drawing to a close. We have another, just 10 minutes left. What advice do you have to people who are listening who maybe are not in a location like Palo Alto, which in its DNA seems open to many of the things that you're talking about, but who are listening and they're hearing what you're saying and they're saying, how do I do this in my city? This sounds great, but where do I start?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, firstly, if they're asking that question, I'm super excited, because that is the first right question. It's going to start with a conversation, and it's going to be a conversation with many people. As we go into 2016, a couple of big themes are emerging around tech and our society and organizations. We are well underway now with the digital transformation. The digital transformation is so quick and so aggressive. The big domains and organizations that we're so familiar with are quite scared. Are quite scared about the change ahead. And they come to Palo Alto and they set up innovation labs just to try to figure out, how to shift gears and become part of the digital transformation. It's changing everything from healthcare to hotels and taxis, tourism, publishing. There's not a domain in our society and in our economy globally now that isn't impacted by digital transformation. And the second phenomena is the Internet of Things, and how this may be and will likely be bigger than the opening acts of the Internet over the last 30 years. So if you've got to be having the conversation, you asked me, what are the steps to take? If you're hearing silence in your organization, whether it's a private company or a government organization, that should be a little bit of a red flag for concern. In the private sector, in a big way, because it's an existential threat. Your business won't survive if you're not embracing the digital transformation. In the government, it'll be a matter of quality services. It'll be a matter of meeting community expectations. And in the government, it's going to be about having the kind of cities we want to live in. So you've got to start this conversation. Now, the next thing is to have a vision. Right? What is that vision for your city? And building that vision, you got to bring in the right stakeholders. It could be that the discussion starts at the CIO level. Now, by the way, lots of cities don't have CIOs or CTOs. So if you're a city manager or in fact, if you're just a person who's passionate about this space, you're the one who probably should raise it if it's not being raised. Get it to the attention of executives. From there, you've got to build a vision. Even if you're not intending to start the work next year or the year after, what is the comprehensive plan over the next 15 years, right? And the plan a vision will reflect your challenges. So every community, every city is different. And so you'll want to focus on the things that are really important. Is it a better economy, which for many cities, that's a driver? Is it more housing options? Is it a transportation, which I've used as a theme throughout this conversation today? Identify those areas and wrap around that some form of strategy. To the extent you can, to the extent you have tech communities, tech organizations in your community, I think there's an opportunity for some outreach and building a work group of both city leaders and other stakeholders within your city organization, the tech community, and the other private organizations that have a role to play, and community members. You got to get, we're all about digital, but you got to get in a room, the community center, and have the debate. Bring forward what's happening in other communities like Palo Alto and others where positive change is happening. And I wouldn't worry about the funding right away, right? There's a lot of work to do, and it's going to take a long time. I'd really be concerned right now on those initial steps: the right stakeholders, a vision, and a rigorous debate as you work towards developing your vision and strategy.
So one final question then related to this, because we're just running out of time. What advice do you have to innovators in the government who are facing resistance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What should they do?
And I have empathy for that, because I know that they do get this resistance. I think they could look to good examples, do their homework and show the possibilities. Look for champions. in organizations, when you want to get things done that are complicated and there is a chance of resistance, some of the strategic moves you can make are to find allies, right? Find out who's on the same page with you. Take people to lunch, have coffee, and begin to build a network of people who support you. If it's just you and you're in a lone voice, that's going to be hard, and it is hard. This is not easy. And I can see, I know that some IT manager somewhere in the United States is watching this video live or will watch it as a recording and say, Jonathan is, he's in Palo Alto. He's got all these advantages. I have a high degree of empathy for that. And so start the hard work, because it's worth it. It really is worth it. We have to together recreate our cities. We can't apply the solutions of the 20th century for 21st century problems. It's going to require bright and motivated individuals. So you have my support. Reach out to people that that could help champion, and that could be me, but it could be somebody in a city that's closer to you that you admire, and know that when you do succeed, it'll be worth the effort and the difficulty it is right now.
Okay, well, what an insightful conversation that we've just been having with Jonathan Reichental, who is the Chief Information Officer for the City of Palo Alto. And Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time today to share your expertise with us.
Well, thanks, Michael. I have enjoyed it. I'm always surprised how quick the time goes. By the way, I'm thrilled with the work you're doing, and I think these videos that you do, these conversations are valuable. I've watched many of the interviews you've done, and you get incredible people on your show. So keep it up, and thank you. It was a privilege to spend some time with you today.
Thank you. You're very kind, and I hope you'll come back and we'll do it again.
Yes.
You have been watching episode number 147 of CXOTalk with Jonathan Reichental, who's the CIO for the City of Palo Alto. And boy, oh boy, this 45 minutes has gone by quickly. Everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you to Jonathan, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.